Thought I'd give you a brief report on the Grand Canyon trip. I'm going to try to put together a presentation, but it's going to take some doing to make it interesting and relevant. I have a lot of picture of rocks, and most of you guys seen one rock, you've seen them all. So try to make it relevant, but just give you a couple areas of report. The Grand Canyon is one of the most awesome spots on Earth for geology, because it's one spot where you've got 6,000 feet of rock exposed. There's a lot of rock, in our area, but it's unless it's a mountain cliff or something, it's not exposed. But Grand Canyon, you have an opportunity to look deeper into the crust of the earth and get an idea of what's going on. Top of that, it sets the stage for something called the Grand Staircase, which goes clear up to the high mountains of Utah. So you're looking at 15,000 feet of sediment when you get a chance to put that all together. And when we finished Grand Canyon, Katie and I tried to go to Zion and Bryce National Park. That was part of our plan. But we got off I-15 and started toward Zion. The car had trouble. And so turned around and, fiddled with things, but said, probably better not take a chance in the Utah high desert. So headed, we didn't do Bryce Canyon or Zion. Would have liked to have done that, but, and it's probably a good thing considering the amount of paperwork that I ended up having to do getting back. So hit Grand Canyon on Tuesday morning, about 10 o'clock in the morning, a place called Marble Canyon near Lee's Ferry. Lee's Ferry was about the only crossing of the Colorado. There was something called the crossing, the Fathers, that's underneath the Glen Canyon, Lake Powell right now. But it's about the only crossing. And the rocks that constitute most of the Grand Canyon are not exposed. They're just starting to come into view. And so what you got is something called the Kaibab uplift like that, and the Colorado River then was able to chew a hole in that. Now it's pretty clear looking at it that the earth cracked in order to make that happen. If you've ever been to the Madison Valley, you'll notice that where the lake is on the north end of the valley, and the river doesn't go over the low spot in the divide, say between McAllister and Norris. It goes out through the northeast corner, the bear trap, right? See, and you can tell that's a crack. There's a crack, and so the water that was above there flowed through that crack and then really carved the canyon. That's what happened to the Grand Canyon, except on a major scale. So I did the upper 2/3 of the canyon, 188 miles, which, when you start looking, that's from here to Great Falls, okay, by raft, okay. And they were motorized raft, which is, I appreciate. Some people go down there with oars. And I'm going to try to show you, a video I found on YouTube that'll give you a perspective of what it's like. Okay, a lot of those rapids were 10 out of 10. Grand Canyon has its own rating system, and so a number of those rapids are 10 out of 10. I couldn't tell the difference between a 9 and a 10, to be honest with you. They're pretty good. So got a chance to look at the rocks and, to really see, and it's pretty impressive. You got 188 miles. Actually, the canyon itself is about 280 miles long. And those rock layers, once they appear the whole canyon. And see, it's hard for people to process the significance of that, but let's say you have something called the red wall limestone. Here, and then you have the Muov limestone here. Okay, now in Montana, the red wall is actually your Madison limestone. When you're going between here and Livingston, those gray rocks that are lifted up, you particularly notice them on the south side, but they're both sides. The Bridgers, Ross Peak, it's all Madison limestone. And it's the same limestone as Redwall. Covers, the entire, 2/3 of the western United States. We're talking hundreds of thousands of square miles. You're not going to lay that down in a small localized flood. Just can't. Now, the Muav limestone in the Grand Canyon here is known as the Mar limestone, Meagher, like Mar County and stuff like that. Same limestone. Now there's rock between the Mar and the Redwall here, but in the Grand Canyon there isn't. Okay, and it's a line. It's just like this. For 188 miles. Solid line. Now, okay, you start throwing million years, the human brain doesn't calculate. It's just zeros, zeros, doesn't calculate. So let me try to do it this way. So let's say they claim the canyon is 9 million years old. So we'll round figure it up to 10. Just, I can round figure this up to 10 as easy as they got 9 million to start with. Okay, so let's say the canyon overall is eroding at the rate of 1 millimeter per year on the average. Now there's enough rubble in the canyon to let you know that, millimeter, nobody would really argue, 1 millimeter per year, okay? That's the tiniest mark on the centimeter side of the kids' rulers, okay? You got the inches on one side and centimeters, and that's 1 millimeter per year. Okay, that would mean in 1,000 years, that'd be a meter. That's roughly 3 feet. 1,000 years would get you 3 feet of erosion. Okay, 1 million years, 3,000 feet of erosion. Okay, 10 million years, she's gone. See, and you have to, like I say, they throw millions out there, but without anybody processing, what that means, okay? See, 3 feet in 1,000 years? Yeah, you can see why those canyon walls would be vertical the way they are. So, so where's the erosion? That's the point. Okay, I mean, we got gullies and everything around here that get eroded and everything. There is supposedly 140 million years between this and this. And not a stitch of evidence. Not a stitch. Every layer, the sandstone at the bottom, the shale, every single one of those layers all through the canyon. I mean, you'll see a little dip once in a while. You see a spot where, there was a fault or something, but for the most part, those layers are flat. Now, any objective person looking at that say, it can't, there has to be erosion, and there isn't any. There's no evidence of erosion. So the guys that are evolutionary here, they're not seeing because they don't want to. That's what it boils down to. You try to take an objective look at that. Every one of these layers covers the entire mountain west. The sandstone at the base, the limestones, the shales, they cover the entire mountain west. That does not sound like a small localized flood building up over millions of years in an inland sea. See, that's not what you're looking at. The other thing I was thinking about, we always camped on beaches, because where else are you going to camp? Okay, there's no place else to camp. And so I'm looking at all this sand, okay, because I don't know how long it's going to take for Katie to get the sand out of this stuff. It's going to be a while, I can tell you that. Okay, sand, but okay. So I'm looking at, okay, I'll just pick the Tapete sandstone down at the bottom, okay? Here in Montana, it's known as the Flathead sandstone. And it's because the guy that first discovered the sandstone discovered it on Flathead Pass going over the bridges, and so he called it flathead sandstone. But it's all over the west side of the Tobaccorites and any of these mountains that are uplifted here. So we're talking, say, it's a small deposit, say 200-300 feet. Okay, you gotta understand, that's small. That's one of the smaller scale deposits compared to, say, the red wall limestone, for example. All right, and so let's say you got 200 feet of sandstone covering the entire mountain west, okay, anything pretty much west of the divide, right? And, in this desert southwest, okay, it covers all that. What's it take to make sand in the first place? You got to have sand before you have sandstone. So you start thinking, okay, what is it going to take to pulverize rock down to sand 200 feet thick over a bunch of Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, Utah? And that's not the only layer of sandstone in there. There's a bunch of layers of sandstone. Okay, so, when you start trying to really process this, it's going to take something as massive as the flood to explain it. And you really have to be looking at things through a very small straw in order not to see it. Okay. So that's one of the things that is impressive to me. I mean, I'm sitting here, I'm in the bottom of the canyon, and I'm looking up at this stuff. And I tried to get some good pictures that I could use to illustrate, what it is. So I enjoyed the geology part. I did get a chance to interact with Dr. Cleary, and I'm hoping to be able to interact with him some more. He was pretty open. He could tell I was interested in the geology. When he started talking, most of those guys' eyes glazed over, and I think you guys can relate to that. It's like yeah, right? But I'll give you one example. I had a chance, like I say, there's 24 people that are, signed on for the trip, okay? There's the two ICR guys, Dr. Clem Cleary, and, a guy by the name of Kevin Turley that's the kind of coordinator. Then there's the 4 guys from Western River Raft, okay? And 2 of those guys are the primary guys. They're back there steering the thing, okay? Those guys are really important, okay? Then the other guys are there to catch you. They're really important, okay? And they work together. And I appreciate those guys because they're running the river all day, which is, I wanted the guy that was driving the raft that I was on, I said, I noticed you're pretty skilled. I mean, you try, when you hit these waves, I hear the motor revving and dropping on. I said, you're trying to make it good for us. I said, yeah. I said, but even the calm spots of the river, I said, I noticed that the motor's struggling sometimes. He said, yeah. He said, you got to watch this river all the time. He said, you go slack for a minute, it's going to get you. So those guys are running those rafts, okay? So the day starts, in the morning, and they fire up the burners. They're the guys going to be fixing breakfast. They're the guys serving breakfast. They're guys cleaning up after breakfast. They're the guys running the rafts. They're the guys setting things up when we camp for the evening. They fix supper. They serve supper. They clean up after supper. Do you think they earn their tip money? Yeah, they did. But you can appreciate their skill. One rapid, the guy said, "You guys aren't going to feel it too much. I mean, you'll get knocked around." But he said, "You're not going to feel it too much if we do our job." Okay, so I was watching the boat in front, so because I was always in the second boat. So he comes down, and then he swings it sideways, brings it right up against this major rock. See, then he shoots it that way. See, and then he shoots it that way, and then he shoots it that way, to get out of the current. See, now, like I say, the rapids weren't super rough on that spot. They were rough enough. But that was a lot of skill for him to be able to do that. If any of us have been driving it, that boat'd still be on the rock. I mean, that's hey, there are boats. See, because somebody wrecks down there, how do they get them out? There's boats there have been there 40, 50 years. Yeah. You know, Ben Roper's boat. Okay, can't get him out. Okay, so it makes you think. They told us. They said, okay, here's what it's like, and see, we're not overstating, and we're not understating. But if you don't think you can do that, now's the time to get off. Nobody will say anything about it. I mean, you know, but if you don't think that you can make this trip, now's the time to get off, because once we leave, only way anybody's getting out of here is helicopter, and we're probably not going to do that unless it's a major emergency. So, you know, they let us know ahead of time. So I had a chance to talk to Dr. Cleary, and I said, you guys, if you're going to do an ICR presentation on Glacier Park, see, they got one for Yellowstone, but they don't have one for Glacier. Because in Glacier Park, you got these really steep cliffs like this, and then it's kind of flat like that, okay? And these steep cliffs are belt formation rocks, and they're hard. And they call these Precambrian. In fact, the date they give you for some of these in Glacier, 2.2 billion. You know, those poor Precambrian rocks in the Wolf Creek Canyon, they're only 1.3 billion. I mean, no, that's not even competitive. And then these rocks here are what they call Cretaceous rocks. Say 80 million. See, and they got something they call the Lewis Overthrust Belt here, where these rode over the top. And there's some truth in that, but needs to be looked at from a creation perspective. So I told Dr. Cleary, I says, before you guys can do presentation on Glacier Park, you're going to have to explain the belt formation. You have to say where that came from. He said, yeah. He said, I agree. He said, Now, what was really interesting, underneath the Tapeats Foundation, there's a whole section where they call it the Grand Canyon Supergroup. And some of those rocks here look exactly like those rocks. See, and I mentioned that to Dr. Cleary, and he said, yeah, I know. And he said, that's the thing I'm going to be working on. He said, the fact is, I'll be in Montana in September looking at that. See, my point is, able to have this type of interaction with him, see, in order to set the stage. Now, he gave me an open door, gave all of us an open door. I mean, he actually pretty open about his, I'll put it in those terms, his faith. He says that the Great Flood points to salvation through Jesus Christ. It does. See, and I just happened to, he used Ephesians 2:8 and 9. Does anybody here not know Ephesians 2:8? He used Ephesians 2:8 and 9, just simple belief, right? See, now, he and I were talking about this Red Wall and Muav. He said, yeah, it's crazy. He said, I mean, how do they get that 140 million year gap in there? See, now, the fact that there's no erosion marks here is a pointer to the fact that their paradigm of the vast evolutionary time is wrong. It indicates the paradigm is wrong. So 1 Peter 3:20 and 21, right? That talks about how the patience of God was waiting during the days of Noah, in that time of Noah, during the construction of the ark, in which a few, that is 8 souls, were saved by water. And corresponding to that, or as an antitype, immersion now saves you. Not the removal of dirt from the flesh, but an appeal to God for a good conscience through the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Gone into heaven after angels and authorities and powers have been subjected to him. He gave me an open door. See, so I get to start asking the questions. Okay, here's just like this is an indicator that the evolutionary paradigm, it's a signal. There's something wrong here. 1 Peter 3:20 and 21, which flat says immersion now saves you, see, is a signal that your salvation by faith alone paradigm is wrong. And everybody's got to go check their paradigms. You got to go back and you got to look at the basis on why you believe what you believe. Okay, and most of them don't. They just accept it. See, so I get to challenge them. Had a couple of other very good interactions. There's, one couple I was very, very impressed with. They're, I had numerous conversations with them, and one of the things I said along the way is that I said there's two kinds of people in the world. There's truth seekers and there's excuse makers, right? Now, not that you guys haven't heard that said at all, but they thought that was pretty foundational, and they liked it. They agreed. And they said, whatever the Bible says, that's it for us. So, and they even got the website, newcreationstudies.org. And I told them, I said, that's going to challenge you, but I'm praying that I get the opportunity to actually physically go and take some time with them, because you got to explain that stuff. You can't, this isn't a one shot, okay, we'll give you the whole deal. Here, 4 spiritual laws and we're done. It's, you got to lay the groundwork. So, and then there's another gentleman too I think we have an open door with. So keep praying for those. So that part of that mission was accomplished. You can't, very difficult to have an in-depth Bible study under the conditions which we were. You didn't have enough time, didn't have enough light. Nobody had Bibles. I mean, they did, but if they did, it was on their phone, and they were trying to save their battery power and stuff like that. So that part was good. Just see how it goes. Okay, how many of you have ever shaken hands with me? Okay, so how's the old grip, do you think? Good. Okay, so the way these rafts were set up, okay, like I say, there's going to be 12 people from, the tour people. There's going to be one ICR guy and the two Western Rivers guys. One Western River guy, he's back there with the motor. So there's a spot, there's 9 spaces up front, okay? And, and to do that, you got to, spread your legs out like this and sit down on hard rubber. Well, I knew that wasn't going to work for me. I could see this is not going to work. There is what they call the princess section in the back. But I could see that wasn't going to work for me because I'd have to sit with my legs straight out, okay? And, I started learning a while ago that I was telling somebody when a number of years ago I went to Grundy, Virginia. I hadn't been there for about 15 years. There was a bank I always used to jump off, so I came over and jumped off that bank, and I realized that is not going to work anymore. You're getting feedback. So, I am 75. Now, I wasn't the oldest guy on the trip. There was a guy of 78 that was older. And he was pretty limber, but he fought a few things too. So and there were a couple older ladies that they weren't, they were more like in their 60s, but I really appreciated the efforts they made. So I actually sat, okay, the 9 spots were in front of me. I actually sat, had a box where they stored provisions, so I sat on that. And you got a strap here, and then there's a strap behind you. And they told us, now look at, we say to the guys in front, get down, we mean get down. They said it's called sucking rubber. Okay, that means get your face right down in those. And so I'm up a little higher, so I'm a little bit more protected. So we started off the first day, and for very long you hit a river, like a number 6, okay, and that's your introduction, because they don't look that bad. I mean, they don't look that bad. And of course, it's a bigger river than you think, okay? I'd say it's about 5 times the size of the Missouri at Fort Benton, to give you an example, okay? So, I mean, it's draining, western Wyoming. It's draining the western slope of Colorado. I mean, there's a lot of snow feeding in. Plus, see, Glen Canyon Dam up above, they store the water there. And then now they're pushing water down to Lake Mead. See, they're trying to manage that. So, there's a lot of water. In some places, the river's 100 feet deep. Give you an example. It's kind of where it's maybe backed up or a little bit, but it's, so. So, hit the first rapid, about and you don't realize it, but the river goes in waves. You see it on the smaller rivers, but you don't think about it. But these are big. All of a sudden, you see that big wave coming up. Say, okay, I've seen this at the Atlantic, and I've seen this at the Pacific, but I wasn't expected to see it here, And so you realize, okay, that was an easy rapid. Realize, okay, got to pay attention. See, and some of those were pretty rough. I got down there, and there's one called Hermit. And I don't usually buy T-shirts, but at the end of this one, there's a T-shirt I bought. And it says, I survived, okay? And it gives the list of, one of those is Hermit, okay? And they told us that, now, this is technically tough, and it's a 9, but they said they're not number 5. If you're not careful, number 5 wave down there, it'll get you. So I'm hanging on, right, going down, and you're bucking. I mean, this thing is bucking you up and down, and thrown to the side. I mean, you're coming into those things, there's waves rolling in on the right, and waves rolling in on the left. See, and we hit number 5. I'm back in the Princess section.
On number 9? On the Hermit?
On the Hermit, yeah. And, now my one hand's hanging on, okay. But I'm, that broke my grip on that strap. I mean, that gives you an idea. There are a couple young guys, we're okay. They're up front, okay. Bring it, white water, bring it, okay. After about several of those, both of those lost their left shoe. Took them all. And so after that, most of the time was spent back in the Princess section. Because, so it's definitely a whitewater rafting experience. And, somebody put up the money for me. I appreciate it. It was $4,000 to do it. So if you're thinking about it, start saving. And, I remember going to Ross Peak with Jim Mitchell and Steve Doty and a bunch of you guys, and I enjoyed it, but I wouldn't do it again. And I enjoyed this trip, but I wouldn't do it again. And we finally finished up. We did the last rapids was a 10 lava. So I'm, the last, half a day I'm getting prepared for lava rapids mentally, see, because I am concentrating on hanging on. Okay, the highest priority is hang on, okay? If I can't see anything, hang on, all right? So we hit it, and it was a 10, all right, but I hung on, didn't get, and there are times, there's people broke loose. The guide, he stood next to me, his name was Mark, kind of a really nice guy. And one of the young fellows up front, he broke loose. This guy was there so fast. And see, because one of the main purposes of the life preservers, so they got something to grab a hold of. Yeah. Also, if you fall in the river, but one of the main purposes. So, they had to engage in several rescues. There's a bunch of guys that got knocked around pretty good by that. So that part of it was, definitely, if you want a whitewater rafting experience, that's a good one, and it'll challenge you, and so Any questions anybody'd like to ask me? Just Mel. Second here. New microphone.
I assume that the power was an outboard motor. How big of a motor was it? Did you ever look?
30 horse motor.
How many?
30.
30 horses. So no, not a lot of horses
Right.
in reality. Was it a propeller or was it a pumper?
Propeller.
It was a propeller. Okay. How long was the boat?
Boat was about 25 feet long.
About 25 feet long, and how wide?
About 15.
Now that's wide for a boat.
Yeah, it is. Well, it's a raft, really, is what it is.
Yeah, but it's wide.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And they built those. Those are their own design.
And
You know.
the tubes is like this big around on the sides?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen one of those.
Yeah. It's actually this didn't have side tubes like a lot of them do. This was just the 5 tubes underneath. It's just all the way underneath. No side tubes.
Okay, all right, it wasn't, yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah. So if you look at it, it looked like 5 torpedoes coming at you. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it wasn't a super big motor, but it was big. You know, I mean, those guys got a lot of experience on the river, so they knew what they need. You want to have minimum possible with, you know, built-in extra capacity, but they knew what they needed.
Well, obviously, otherwise they would have had bigger motors.
Right. Yep. Exactly right. Yep. Yeah. Jerry?
Just a comment, while we were in Hawaii, obviously there's beaches there. Those beaches, for everybody's information, are proclaimed to have been produced by the poo-poo fish, which eat the coral and go over, and that's how we got hundreds of feet of sand all around Hawaii.
Yep. Yep. It's okay. Where else? I mean,
There poo-poo fish in the river?
no. Yep, it's good. Yep. Other comments or questions here? Yeah, Nick.
A few years ago, Jill and I had the opportunity to go to Alaska on a sheep hunt, and we knew about 3 years before that hunt what to expect, sort of. So we trained, we camped, we worked on our outdoor skills, survival skills, whatever, for 3 years. And then we got there, and you could have thrown pretty much all that training right out the door, because the things that got us was the most simple things that we didn't expect. And that was having to hike in the river bottom, flat, no, serious climbs. We're on a sheep hunt, so we're thinking straight up the mountain. It was the river bottoms that really got us, and we did not train for that. Knowing now what we know, we would train completely different. You talked about having a paradigm shift in your thinking. What challenged you on this trip? What was your paradigm shift?
Well, I don't know as I really had any paradigm shifts. They recommended kind of an outfitter's deal for the equipment you need. And so, I said, okay, I'll take their word for it. And glad I did. They knew. For example, one of the things that they send you is a really good rain jacket and a really good set of rain pants. Now, you generally don't need rain jackets or rain pants in the desert, right? Okay, but it's not for the desert because, say day 3, for example, they said we're going to be in rapids most of the day today, and so be prepared, right? So, okay, so I get my rain jacket on and I get my rubber pants on, and I think, okay, well, we'll see. Yeah, well, we saw, and because they told us ahead of time, look, you can be miserable, but if you put this rain gear on, you'll have a lot better trip. Well, they were exactly right. Biggest paradigm shift I had, Nick, okay, here I am, pair of shorts, sandals. Now, I did have socks on. I'm not, you know, I'm not going the barefoot route. You know, I got a floppy hat. I think Katie got a picture of me. I'll probably show you that when I put my presentation together, so you know what the dude looks like. So I'd say just the preparation there was a big paradigm shift for me, because I've never been floating on an inner tube, much less whitewater rafting. So that was probably some of the challenges I faced. Probably the biggest one. Yeah, good question. Other questions? Yeah, Mel?
I just want to kind of make a statement. I've only been on one White River raft trip, and that was as a teenager, and that was on the Sandy River, and I've never heard of anybody else ever shooting that area of the Sandy River, and I know why now. On the thing, we was on a 12-man boat. There were 6 of us, highly unprepared. When I checked it out, it was where you could walk across the rapids. No, we went through rapids that literally, at one point, only 2 of us could, because we didn't have a rope long enough to let the boat around it on the thing. That I was in the back end of the boat, and he was in the front end of the boat. All we have is paddles. Didn't even have life jackets, okay? He knocked me out of the boat. The boat completely lapped when it went over the falls and hit a wall. It completely collapsed the boat in between, knocked me out of the boat. And the only reason why I didn't drown was he reached down and I was reaching up, and he got a hold of my wristwatch, because all it was bubbles that I was in. In the thing. Again, I've never heard of anybody that's ever shot that section of rapid, the Sandy River, before. And we come along one spot, and the guy's fishing, and he says, I've been fishing here for 6 years, and I've never seen anybody come by here and say, how are you going to get around the dam? What dam?
Yep. But see, that illustrates, and Sandy is small. I mean, Sandy is can be a really big river, but it's smaller than the Colorado. But boy, it gives you an idea what running rapids is like. It's nothing to mess with, and like I say, who knows, I mean, who knows how many people died going down the Sandy River they never told you about. We know a lot of people died in the rapids of Colorado. A lot of people never made it out. So, it's pretty tough. About 27,000 people a year run the Colorado now, which is pretty impressive. And the guys that run these crews, they get a pretty good idea what the river's like, which is helpful. When Powell went down the river, he had no idea whether there's a waterfall down there. There isn't any. But, in that narrow canyon, if there's a waterfall, how do you get out? You go over it. Yeah, that's right. And you might not survive. But there wasn't any. So I mean, there's a lot of things about it that I did really enjoy it, and glad I did it. I'm glad I'm out of the river. I'm glad I'm out of the sand, and I do like my own bed, But it was a worthwhile trip, and again, I'm still processing some of it. And again, I'm going to try to compress things, and I do want to show a YouTube video that I found that I think could give you a good illustration what it's like going down the river, and I'll try to put some geology things into perspective to help process what you're actually looking at, and just make a somewhat comprehensible. But it's going to take me several weeks to do that. That's those things take a lot of work. So as soon as I can, I'll put something together and take it, give you guys a look at it. 6 days. Well, basically from about 8 in the morning till about 4:30 in the afternoon. Varied a little bit. One morning, they said we want to go early because we want to get to Havasu Creek before anybody else gets there. So the crew hopped to, and we generally 8 till about 4:30. So it was somewhat a relaxed trip, but it was good. I'm one of the young fellas, pretty athletic guy. He was on the other boat, about 24. You can tell strong, athletic, quick reactions. But his GoPro camera is in the bottom of the Colorado River. See, so I took, I had a Pendaflex that Matt kind of recommended me, and on the second day the battery ran out. So I said, okay, no problem, because I got an extra battery. Well, it was Matt's battery, and for some reason didn't work. So I just put that camera away, which is good, because when I hit the rapid that took me off, my camera would have been in the bottom of the Colorado River also. So you guys do get pictures that you wouldn't get otherwise. So anything else? Yeah, Gary.
Since you were on the raft most of the day, and you had 2 rafts, like how and when did the teaching take place, or the explanations take place?
Yeah. Well, periodically we'd stop. They'd find a spot. Normally the raft guys, they kind of give their own geology tour a little bit, and they're going to tell you that the Tapete sandstone is 530 million years old, for example, and because that's the information they've been fed. See, so they have some stops anyway. There are a couple special stops we made, and so they pull in, and then, Dr. Cleary, they pull the rafts together where they could, and then, and you had to take bathroom breaks. It was pretty rough. You had to urinate in the river, okay? Nowhere else, and so especially rough on the ladies, and But a lot of times we'd stop, and then we'd also get our geology lecture from Dr. Cleary at those. So it was good. He did a good job pointing out this and this and this and different things. It was helpful.
Did the raft guys listen in?
Oh yeah,
To Clear?
yeah. Well, I don't know whether they heard anything. One guy I could tell was a New Age guy. Another guy was a Sierra Club, and the other 2 guys were Mormons, LDS. Okay, and so, the LDS guy, the Sierra Club guy and the New Age guy, they're not listening. But, I don't know, the LDS guys might have paid some attention. The driver of my raft was the Sierra Club guy, and the driver of the other raft was the New Age guy. So, I know that because there's some walks that I didn't take, because the further into the trip I got, the stiffer I got. And so I'd kind of stay back, and so he'd be doing his meditation and stuff like that while the rest of us were up hiking. So I knew he was New Age. Yeah. So, it's hard to, there was a lady on board that was a geologist, Roman Catholic, and she didn't hear any of it. You don't know why. I mean, you're sitting there, you're looking at this, say, okay, I got some questions for you. Where do we get this much sediment over this big an area this fast? It had to all be laid down rapidly. Some of you guys remember when we were doing a deal on the university, and we had that one college professor who was just absolutely obnoxious. How many of you guys remember that? Dr. Feely, I think, was his name. But anyhow, so we're trying, we did the Mount St. Helens video, and we're trying to show how that was rapid deposition and then rapid erosion. And of course, this guy was being obnoxious and all that stuff. And but one of the students, kind of broke through that, and he said, what evidence do you have for the rapid deposition of this sediment? And I use the example of the Little Colorado River. You know, one of our stops was the Little Colorado River. Of course, the old walls are like that. But see, the thing is, it's a meandering stream coming into the Colorado, all right? So you got walls, say, 2,000, 3,000 feet deep, okay? So how do you get a meandering stream to cut vertical walls? Well, the only way that's possible is if the sediment's all soft, which just means it's rapidly deposited, you know, laid down pretty much all at the same time. And so you can see what happened when, you know, say the crack happened and the main Colorado charges through that crack and starts chewing it down, right? Then here's the Little Colorado, that nice meandering stream flowing into the main Colorado. It's up here. So what's it going to do? It's going to chew its way down. Well, what's it going to do? It's going to chew straight down. Now, if that rock is hard, it can't do a vertical. It can't do a vertical. It's going to end up being, yeah, it's going to be wide, and because the rocks are hard, you can't. See, the only way you get those vertical canyons is those, if all the sediment is soft. And again, no, these guys, they don't have any explanation for it. Well, this happened. Well, that's how it got carved. Well, okay. Yeah, I'm going to make $1 million by next week too. You know, I gotta explain how that's going to happen, right? And they don't give you any explanations for that. So once again, those are pointers to the fact that yes, this was sediment that was laid down rapidly, and it was carved rapidly. It did not take long at all for that to go down. So the Grand Canyon is not 9 million years old. The Grand Canyon is about 5,000 years old. 5,500 maybe. So yeah, not very old. And that those sediments, I mean, and you see evidence of that, you know, today when we go to Great Falls, you're going through the Missouri River, you got cliffs that are absolutely vertical. Absolutely vertical. In fact, some of them are a little bit undercut. Okay? And you can tell looking at it, the old Missouri River, when the floodwaters drain off, hitting those, chewing them off, hitting the next one, chewing them off. And so it's not that old, because if they're very old, they wouldn't, you know, that stuff would be breaking off, sloughing off, earthquakes would be toppling it. It's not that old. So you don't have an old earth, and there's no real evidence. You know, rocks do not come with a name tag on it that says Tapete Sandstone, 530 MYA. That stands for million years ago. They don't come with name tags. You know, the rocks are what they are. And so you got to look for a realistic explanations how they got there. You can do pie in the sky, but pie in the sky shouldn't be believable. You know, the only good explanation is the flood. Anything else? Yeah, Dan?
So I've been doing work up in Troy again, and driving between Troy and Libby, there's the Kootenai River that cuts through there. When you said that the Grand Canyon obviously was started by a giant crack, if you pay attention, that canyon through there, especially that real narrow spot, it was obviously a crack,
Yeah.
like super obvious. In fact, there's a couple of spots where the bedrock juts out into the river, and it's at river level and then drops down, I don't know, 20, 30 feet. And you can tell that it didn't happen that long ago, because those rocks that are in the river are still super jagged. In fact, it was funny, I was looking and there was a kidney-shaped rock inside a kidney-shaped hole that was all rounded off, right next to another chunk of the same rock that was super jagged on the, you know, the downstream side. But it was just something I was sitting there looking at. As you're talking, I'm like, that's exactly how this is working.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and see, western Montana is very, very complex because you have tremendous upfaulting. you know, big rafts of sediment sliding over the top of other sediment, and tremendous folding and uplifting is very complex. That's a good example. Mel?
Got a question. What comes first, the rock or the material that composes the rock?
Boy, Mel, that's a tough one. Like you say, where did the sand for, the
Came first, the sand or the beach, huh?
yeah. I mean, obviously the sand was a part of the flood. Just try to, process the fact that these massive tsunami waves are coming in and pulverizing everything, turn it to sand, and then washing it so that the sand is, anytime you got water flow or fluid flow, it's going to separate. So different things are going to separate it. So what's happening is when this thing's coming in and it's pulverizing everything. Then when it settles, your sandstone's in the bottom, then your shales, your clay stuff is next. Then your limestone, which is a result of chemical processes, comes on top. And they call that a mega sequence. A sandstone, a shale, and a limestone. And there's 6 of those on the earth. Another thing that Dr. Cleary said was that, he's been able to do research now on all 6 continents, except, all the continents, in other words, except for Antarctica. And it's the same pattern. He's looked at the, he's got, the geology guys, they do all these core drillings, like the oil companies and stuff, they do core drillings. And then they publish the results on a common site that they all have access to. Well, he was working in the petroleum industry for a while, so he can read those. So he knows what he's looking for. See, and so the sandstone, the base, the great unconformity at the bottom, every continent. South America, North America, Europe, Asia, Australia. Every continent. Every continent. Localized flood. See, he makes a great point. He said the rocks don't lie. The rocks don't lie. So the evidence is there, staring anybody in the face that's willing to look. I asked him, I said, so when you talk to the evolutionary geologist about it, I said, you got all this data. And I said, what do they say? He said, well, your data is good, Tim. We just don't agree with your conclusion. Well, okay. What's the old saying? None is so blind as him who will not see. I think so.